Welcome to 15 And, where we grow through the transformative stories and principles from the Bible. I hope you enjoy this teaching, I hope you share it with others, and I hope you go to 15and.org, click the Donate Now button, and support this mission.
I think one of the weirdest things that I saw as a pastor for over 15 years, however long it was I pastored, was there was such an anxiety in Christians that hey, the cultural headwinds are against us. We're not really confident in the truth of our worldview. So we need to fight for these cultural wins. So then somebody would be come out as Team Jesus. And it was yeah, we got one for God, right? We're not that convinced in the robustness of our worldview and our transformation. And I'm not saying everybody feels this way, right? But for a lot of people, it's there's these cultural headwinds that are against us. And if we could just turn that tide, if we could just win at the bigger, larger level, then I'll feel okay about the way that I've bet my life on this truth. And yes, I think there's mixed motives. There's part of that that's I just want everybody to know the truth. But you can hear it in people's anxiety, right? Or the way that they talk. There are things sometimes done where people give interviews and the way that they have to say Jesus' name every 5 seconds because it's I'm not being faithful to God in some way. And the thing for me is just this. The cultural headwinds are always going to be against us. So the idea is this, and we're coming out of the last series that we did on Revelation, and this would be a crappy movie if this is the ending. And there is no resolution of things. It just fades off into whatever. We expose finally that this is a simulation or your existence just stops. No, we know there's something. There's resolution coming. But it doesn't mean we live in great defeat and struggle now. Heaven can be now. I think it was Dallas Willard, the writer on spiritual formation, was go to heaven now. It doesn't have to be this off and later greater reality. It's something we can experience. But it's not going to come because we win at the big. It's going to be because we are transformed in the small. The movie One Battle After Another did well at the Oscars, got a lot of accolades. I watched it. And, well-made film, entertaining, stupid, rotten thinking and ideology and idea. Because it really glorified violence, and it was all about tearing down the institution. It was a reactive identity. It wasn't a proactive vision offering a better way. It was about destruction. And what I believe we see in the New Testament with two landing places in the texts are such a powerful vision for how heaven can be now. And we can relax, and we don't have to win this cultural battle, and we can understand. We don't want to be polluted by the ideas of the time. We don't have to have a reactive identity. We are just proactively living out transformation. So that's what we're going to be focused on in this series, these two texts. I believe they're high water marks. You can search it out for yourself. One is going to be the fruits of the Spirit. The fruits of the Spirit are this profound list of characteristics. This is why on the Site Shift side, we walk companies through transformation, and they're it just works. And I'm yeah. If they want to dig deeper, find me a better list than love and joy and peace and faithfulness and gentleness and goodness and self-control. I'm probably forgetting one. We'll talk through them all. But find me a better list. This is God saying, this is the fruit of who I am. This is the fruit of how my Spirit is at work in the world. This is the high water mark of the definition of my character. I am the full expression of love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. Whoa. And we're going to look at that with, I think, another brilliant list. So one of the things that rabbis did, and it came out of the Greek tradition and probably existed before that somewhere, when somebody was a teacher, they dedicated themselves to a set of teachings. So this was a normal thing. So if it was you're following around Socrates or Plato or Aristotle, you're okay, what are they about? Well, here's their main set of teachings. If you value a famous rabbi by the name of Jesus or whatever, he had a set of teachings. In other words, he put a stake in the ground and was like, this is it. Like, this is the Beatitudes, as we call them. So we're going to look at how these come together to understand what's happening in our lives in the smallest of moments to bring heaven now. Now, when I talk about this idea of the fruits of the Spirit, and I'm just introducing this for the rest of the series, the idea is the fruit of who you are comes out of the cultivation and the way God grows you. And that growth usually happens through circumstances you don't choose. So in the weirdest way possible, I'll say it, life is a mystery that you are put into circumstances you don't choose to get to choose who you're going to become. If your circumstances are easy, it's not that you find yourself in this moment where the hard things within you are being developed. The insecure moments are being transformed. So when we're in circumstances we wouldn't choose for ourselves, this is the moment that growth starts to occur for us. Now, what's interesting is what we're going to look at is examples in the text of people who go through deep transformations or miss their transformation according to their fruit. So we're going to look at Luke 10. If you want to turn there, you can. And I'm going to be in verse 38. Verse 38, Luke 10. I want to say very clearly, it is a conviction of my life that at any given moment in your story, one or two or three or a few of these fruits are being cultivated in you more than other ones. And you want to learn to recognize that. It's almost like you've got this heat map or radar for where God is growing you. If you're worried about, as I was last night, I'm grilling for my family. Where's the storm? So I look at the radar. I'm not looking at the radar states away. I'm looking at the moment I'm in. You are in moments that are cultivating and drawing out these fruits. But it's not like, this one's being grown in me, so the other ones don't matter. We need all 9 of these fruits, and we need to live all 9 of these Beatitudes. And what I want to do in this series is help you understand where these moments are being grown in you. So we'll look at characters who have struggled with it, failed at it, or been called into transformation. The unique one about today is it's a comparison picture. So, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Whoa. We got to catch up in the flow of the text here. Jesus has just told a story about the parable of the Good Samaritan. So it's all about, are you taking care of someone's need? Don't tell me you love God when you walk by a bloodied and beaten person. And so Jesus tells this story to draw out the racism. Okay, you think the Samaritans are lesser people? They're not worthy. Let me tell you, who's the one that did a good thing here? The priest that walked by and didn't get dirty? The politician that lobbied for safer roads? If we just get the bad people out? Or is it the guy that walked by and met his need? So Jesus has just dropped a bomb, one of his most famous stories ever. Freaking meet them in need. Do the thing. Don't walk by the trash in the kitchen and say, I'll just wait till my wife asks me. You do it. So then we catch up. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. Yeah, so the verb here is very similar to what happened with Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus opened his home. This is an idea that is lost on us. The hospitality is so massive at this time, the shame and honor. When you bring somebody into their home, into your home, it is a very relational thing. Now, Martha opened her home. That tells us a lot. There would have been a guy's name there. So this is a wealthy woman, most likely, who is in some way connected to the ministry of Jesus. If you're not aware, Jesus' ministry was funded by wealthy women. How else did he travel around and do what he was doing? So maybe we have a little bit of that going on. There's a connection here at a lot of different levels. But we see that, and this is important to the story, Martha's in a place to welcome him in. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Now, again, what was normal at that time? A rabbi would teach and people would be seated. And that was the normal posture. Rabbi's teaching, people are seated, except it wasn't people, it was men. We actually have it in the Midrash, I think it is. One of the most famous rabbis is like, if you let your daughter learn from a rabbi, you've basically taught her how to be sexually perverse. Lechery was the term used. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Misogyny is present and real. And while so much of the law was showing people where they're dirty so they could know they need to get clean, the Pharisees and other groups had added all kinds of crazy stuff to it. And so even Jesus doing this is a corrective. He's not chastising Mary, not you. You don't get to be at my feet. This is for men. This is really provocative and powerful. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Now the term here is like you're literally caught in a net like a fish. You're scattered. Everything is going in all these directions. You know, old school computers, you used to say you got to defrag the hard drive. Everything gets fragmented. I feel like I'm a tech expert now because I can push a button and tell a coding program what to do. I definitely ain't. But the idea is we've built technology out of the best way we can understand the human mind. And that Martha's in this place where she is experiencing all of the struggle that's happening in this moment because she is distracted. She's simply not just busy, but being dragged in multiple directions. We could say it this way. You know, she's not just serving. She's not just like taking care of needs. She's being driven by this. It's a punishment. It's a master to her in the moment. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work all by myself? Tell her to help me. Oh, man. Now, I mean, there's some like social codes being broken here. She's just coming straight to Jesus. He's teaching, doing this out in front of everybody. Shame and honor culture is so huge at this time. It's hard for us to understand. You don't have things out loud like this. She's having an outburst. And Jesus calls her on that in a second, but doesn't shame her, and we'll see that. But I want you to see what happens here. I talk about this in terms of an identity fear. This is what Sight Shift is built around. There's an identity fear here. If I'm not needed, I'm not loved. In other words, I get an identity, I get a name by being able to meet a need. By showing up and giving of myself to people and doing the thing that they need, I have an essence. I have something I can fall back on. I have a name. I have an identity. Now, there's a proving dimension to that. There's a going after a validation. Also, there's a trying to avoid being invalidated. I'm going to not speak up for what I need. I'm just going to serve. Either way, I could be an over-helping doormat. Now, which one is Martha doing here in this moment? She's like, hey, you see what I'm doing here? I'm Jesus. Let me prove to you how helpful I am. And you need to tell Mary to help me. Here's how you can know someone is missing the fruit of the Spirit of love being cultivated in them when they're most insecure, is when they make a martyr out of themselves. Look at me and look at what I'm doing. And tell them to help me. I mean, this was one of the things that was really powerful to me as a pastor, and I saw this a lot. And I can spot it in companies. It's a little bit of a different dynamic. But in churches, you have a lot of churches that would die tomorrow, before tomorrow even hits, if there weren't a ton of Marthas in the church, anxiously running around, making sure all the needs are met. And you say, Chris, these needs have to be met. Yes, they do. When I pastored, this is hard. We would get up and be like, look, I mean, one of the contexts I was in, we needed like 100 and something volunteers a month in the children's ministry to make it go. And it's not like people are beating down the door to do that. You're not walking through throngs of people that are in lines going, sign me up. And so what happens is a mechanism starts to develop in institutions. People are pressured to just do. But it might not be coming from a solid core. It might not be the thing they're supposed to do. And so the juxtaposition of this against the parable of the Good Samaritan is so powerful because Jesus is telling a story about, like, you don't walk by a bloodied, beaten person. You also don't make the center of your identity what you do for others. And so Martha's in this place that happens to people that are having this fruit cultivated in the moment because she's like, look at all these selfish people. If it's easy for you to triangulate and push back from a situation and go, they're selfish, I'm not, and you start judging them because in some way they are being selfish, what's happening in that moment is you're trying to get an identity from what you do for others. And that's not a big enough identity because what if you're not doing the right thing? I mean, I can remember tons of times when my kids were little. I'm like, what is my daughter's problem? She is being an idiot. My wife, she's like, I bet they're going to get sick. I bet they're not feeling well. Without fail. Like the next day, they got a fever, they're coughing. I'm like, oh, I missed what was really going on. Here's what's powerful about a person that's having this fruit cultivated in them. It is a gift for them to recognize the need needs to be met. It becomes distorted when they read their story into everyone else's. You should be helping like I am. Maybe they should be. Let's read the passage and see what Jesus does as he gets into a coaching session. Tell her to help me. Chris, I need you to meet with me and my husband because he won't do these 3 things. And we need to go into marriage counseling with the pastor. When I pastored, you'd get that request, Oh, you want me to fix them? When I'd started Sight Shift full-time a decade ago, there was a place I'd go get these smoothies and got to know the person at the business. And straight up, she asked me if I'd coach her boyfriend because she's got a few things he needs to work on. And I'm like, how high can I make the price that I would say yes to this and be excited to do it? Because that sounds stupid. Martha's in this place of like, Jesus, fix Mary. Tell her to help me. I'm the martyr. She's missing it. Martha, Martha says the name twice. You see this with Saul. You see this in a few places. This isn't like a shaming moment. Usually in the text when you see this, it's like, hey, come back to me. Come back to this moment. Come back to center. Come back to what's grounded. Let me give you your name. Your name isn't from what you're doing. I'll say your name twice. You are worried and upset about many things. This idea of worried, what's happening is when you start to spin out a little bit and you get distracted and then your mind's going in 100 different directions, you feel that. You're not locked in, as the kids say today. Lock in. You're in a place that the opposite is happening. It's this diffusion of your essence, of your presence, of who you are and the impact you can have. And then he says you're worried and upset about many things. Now, this shifts the Greek here. It's not a merely internal worry, but it's an outward turmoil. It's an emotional eruption. This is exactly what happened. We actually are seeing Martha crash out. She's caught in the net. That's the Greek of this first term. She starts to get fragmented, and then an eruption occurs. She's crashing out. I wish, I'm just going to be honest with you, Dark Chris here, I wish I were a better human naturally and quicker. When my wife and I got married, we'd be driving places. I may or may not be an aggressive, impatient driver as a natural baseline state. I recently did a roll up behind somebody and click my lights really hard, only to have them tell me it was a friend at a local coffee shop that'll go unnamed. Rhymes with Rargent Coffee. He was like, "That was you that got up behind me flashing your lights?" And I was like, "Oh." Thankfully, I wasn't embarrassed. I confessed this to he's now a friend of mine, an attorney I'd coached. And he was like, "Man, I do that too." And one time they turned into my neighborhood, so I just kept driving. I was like, "That's perfect. Noted." And so I'm in the car with my wife, and my driving makes her feel anxious. It makes her feel bad. So then I can do what a jerk husband would do and say, "That's who I am. You have to deal with it." But what's happening in that moment is the fruit of the Spirit is getting cultivated in me in love. Love is meeting the real need, not getting an identity from just being of service. And I'm discerning the real need, and the real need is to help her feel safe and comfortable. So I drive different while my wife is in the car. I am not saying that to say, put me on a pedestal and celebrate me. Because the minute she's not in the car, I'm not proud of what happens. And you know what's stupid? I'm actually more relaxed and peaceful when she's in the car. Unless we're on the interstate and it's really windy, which happened a while back. She's nervous. It makes me, but no, I'm just like, we're just driving along, everything's good. I don't have to get somewhere 1.2 minutes faster. Because all that hurry, and then they pull up behind you at the four-way stop, and you're like, all that stress, and I didn't even get very far ahead. When she's in the car, I'm more relaxed. So I'm not saying this to say, like, put me on a pedestal. I still got that dark in me, but I will tell you this, the number of times it has come up in conversations with men especially, who are just like, that's how I drive, you have to deal with it. You are missing the fruit of the Spirit being cultivated in you of love. Now, the answer isn't to go to be an overhelping doormat. And if whatever my wife or my kids want, I should do it. No, because then you're becoming a Martha. Let's look at what Jesus does. He's not throwing her down and beating her up. He's showing her how she's crashed out. You've moved from this place that you're caught in the net of this situation and you're distracted. You get anxious and everything gets fragmented. And now you're upset and this is spilled out of you. But few things are needed. Or indeed only one. There's some textual variations on this. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't change the heart of it. Whether Jesus directly just went into, there's one thing that matters. Or from a narrative standpoint, kind of like the Proverbs, 4 things are this, but 2 things are this. There are some priorities in life, but one thing is needed. Whoa. This is coming out of the parable of the Good Samaritan. Don't walk by a bloodied, beaten person. And don't make doing the center of who you are. You have an identity that's more than you're doing. And the fruit of the Spirit of love is getting cultivated in you. And it is a gift, Martha, that you recognize the need. It is a gift. In fact, the word used here that Luke used for like Martha's service, tell Mary to help me. It was a admirable word. It was the quality service. So there's not a thing in this text that's like, you're wasting your time. You're doing stupid stuff. No, what you're doing is good. There's just something more fundamental. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. What is Mary doing that's better? She's not trying to do things for God and for people. She's sitting at the rabbi's feet so she can do things with God and for people. This was a hard part for me as a pastor when I would say to people, like, look, you don't need to just do something because you feel like you're supposed to do something. Yeah, if a bloodied and beaten person is on the side of the road, freaking do something about it. But in this regard, does God want you to do this? So my thing was in a few different churches we led through a turnaround. And one of them, it was in complete devastation. It had to be rebirthed. And they had a ministry where they took care of kids at night and on Wednesday nights. And it was so hard to get people to show up and do it. So I just got a meeting with all the people and I said, do you want to keep doing this? If you didn't have to do it, would you do it? Nobody said yeah. I was like, let's just end it. Nobody fought me on that. After we ended it, you know what went around as a rumor for a little while until we went through like a rebirth process? Chris hates kids. Chris doesn't like kids. He doesn't care about kids. He's just a mean monster of a leader. People have no awareness for how much they're driven by just responding to whatever they feel like is what's needing to be done versus where God is actually leading them with what should be done. Mary sat at the feet of Jesus to find who she is, to find her direction. I'd rather have 10 people serving with God for people than 100 serving for God and for people. Because it's not by might, not by effort, but by His Spirit. One of the things that's really powerful to me about this fruit of the Spirit is how each of these pair with a beatitude in my mind. And the beatitude here that I want to draw your attention to, because this is the real culmination for where this teaching lands. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. Now, what's interesting about this term righteousness is don't think about it as a morality. I am righteous because I have done these things. It's more rooted in a relational term. Feeding the poor, caring for the widow, taking care of the orphan. That's kind of the root language throughout the Old Testament that this would have been based on in the New Testament. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for right relationship, where needs are met, for they shall be what? Filled. Mary was filled at the foot of Jesus. She received, and she had something whole to give from. Martha wasn't shamed. It was just, hey, Martha, what Mary's doing is essential. What you're talking about matters, but it flows out of this. And people that are struggling with the fruit of the Spirit of love put themselves in places that they have a wiring that is beautiful because they can see where righteousness needs to exist, where right relationships would happen so that justice would occur, needs would be met. The problem is they think they're God's Savior for the moment to replace the Savior, not sitting at the feet of the Jesus. They rush in to meet the need because they're activated by it, become an over-helping doormat, and then resent others. And they don't let God do the filling work that God does. There are times in our lives where we have to find ourselves at places that we can rush in and over-rescue, or we can let someone grow into who they're going to become. I think about this fruit like a zipper. There's my part and there's your part. And only when that comes together in a healthy way do we actually see love operating at its highest level. So that Mary and Martha come into perfect harmony. So that we fulfill the Good Samaritan teaching and do what's most important. Let me give you 3 application points that just help me with this. 1, in your home, give what is needed, not what is wanted. Don't just respond to a request. Pause. Is this what they want, or is this what they need? then give the need, even if the want makes you feel more useful. So sometimes it's being of service and saying, I'm going to drive different with my wife in the car. And I'm not going to be irritated at her. I'm going to let that irritation shift to fascination because God is in her and God has made her different. And oh my gosh, I'm more relaxed when I drive that way. What a powerful thing. And as things emerge around me, there are things that I do in the home that I wouldn't do anywhere else because of the nature of the relationship. Because, yes, last night I was asked to measure a window. This is nothing I would ever do in my professional life. I would never measure a window. I measured the window and took a picture. Loaded it up to AI. I said, tell me what these measurements are. I don't even want to try to figure out how to read the measurement just right, you know? But it was a need that needed to be met, and I needed to take care of it, and so I did it. I don't walk by the dishes if they're in the sink. I put them in the dishwasher. There are things that we do that it is because it is needed. But what you have to develop a discernment to do, especially in close proximity relationships, is not just rush in. Give what is needed, not just what is wanted. There are times I say, I want to, but I feel like I shouldn't, and I can't. Or here's why. Here's what I'd like for this to grow in you. Second, on your team, nurture independence. Nurture independence. If you have this wiring, you're really good at, on your team, being always like, I'll take care of it, I'll take care of it, I'll take care of it. And it's why when I work with the CEO that has this wiring as their main identity fear, very often he or she could have an executive team of 5 leaders sitting in the high chair, banging on the high chair, asking to be fed. Because they're not being developed into who they can become. Third, in your community, if you want to think about it this way, in your community, allow people to struggle. Allow people to struggle. So we're not just thinking about work or home. It could be all places. But I just wanted to word it this way to give you as much thoughtful application as possible. It is good and fitting to step in. It is good and fitting to let them struggle. And it's a wise person who can discern the real need over the asked for need. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. I want to read this to you from C.S. Lewis, because if we can really grasp this, small shifts in us will lead to changes in our communities, and that's how big systemic change occurs. So the atomic bombs had been dropped. There was a lot of anxiety. And one of the things that C.S. Lewis is trying to argue for in this age after the atomic bomb had been dropped and so much fear was in the room, the air, the zeitgeist of the times, he's like, look, this is the way it's always been. Much of human history has lived with fear that the next village over, the Vikings are showing up. We're done for. He just said this, if we're all going to be destroyed by an atomic bomb, let that bomb, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends over a pint and a game of darts, not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about bombs. They may break our bodies. A microbe can do that. But they need not dominate our minds. There's always going to be a new thing in the world telling us heaven isn't now. This is what we should be afraid of. Be afraid of this. Be afraid of this. There are people who are making lots of money to keep us all very, very Martha-like, distracted and afraid. And Jesus says, one thing essential, sit at my feet, learn from me. Let's live human lives with the humans that we care about and show up and meet the needs as we live with God for people, not building an identity around saying yes to everything.
I hope you enjoyed this teaching from 15and. Go to 15and.org, share these resources with others, and click the Donate Now button to participate in funding this mission.